Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy Adam, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and this is episode number 264, Mastering Your Nutrition with Chris Masterjohn. And before we dive in, how you guys doing out there? I've been hearing from you on Instagram. I've been getting some emails from you. Sounds like everybody's summer is going well. We're going into the fall with some serious momentum, and I love that we are building up that Million Pound Mission total. If you guys have not donated your weight loss yet on millionpoundmission.com, I need it. Help me hit that million pound mark. We recently crossed 55,000 pounds of weight loss donated. So if you've listened to the show for a while and you dropped a few pounds, 5 pounds, 20 pounds, 100 pounds, whatever it is, donate that weight loss on millionpoundmission.com. And also real quick, make sure you hang out after the show because I got a big announcement about one of my speakers at Million Pound Mission live in October here in Bloomington, Indiana. Now, do you guys ever wish that you had a more simplified way to figure out what style of nutrition plan you should be using? I know there's tons of confusion about nutrition out there, and you guys hit me up all the time for some answers. So today, I'm bringing in the big guns once again. My friend Chris Masterjohn is going to supply you with the specific info that you need to put together your best fit nutrition plan. All right. Now, Chris is super smart. He's very well educated. This dude dives deep. So let me give you a little bit of his background here. Chris earned his PhD. He's also a PhD, but his is the actual PhD, not previously heavy dude. He earned his PhD in Nutritional Sciences from the University of Connecticut in 2012. Then he served as a postdoctoral research associate in the Comparative Biosciences department of the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Illinois, and as an assistant professor of health and nutrition sciences at Brooklyn College. Now he's out of the university space. He's working independently, producing educational content about nutrition. And like when I say educational content, if you guys enjoy deep dives on very specific stuff, you got to check out his show. You got to check out his blog. I'll link all the info here in the show notes. But tune into this episode and dive deep as Chris and I discuss the big nutritional mistakes he's seeing people make right now. We talk about what he is really excited about in the nutrition space. We talk about what he is personally experimenting on right now, and he does a lot of personal experiments that are really cool, and he chronicles all that on his blog and on his podcast. But then we also go pretty deep on his unique process to help you figure out where you need to be spending your time, your money, your attention with your nutrition, with your supplement regimen, all of that. Really, really good. Like I said, a lot of times on my show, especially here with my solo episodes, I'm more about initiating momentum, keeping you guys on the right path, the big picture plan. I don't dive deep so much. That's why I love bringing on a guest like Chris that does dive deep, like seriously just goes down a rabbit hole and educates the heck out of you. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So let's dive on in to episode number 264, Mastering Your Nutrition with Chris Masterjohn. All right, Dr. Chris Masterjohn, welcome to the Million Pound Mission, my friend. How's it going?
Thanks, Adam, for having me. It's great to be here. It's going great.
Well, I'm fired up because I'm the type of person that I love to just get people lit up, get them inspired, get them in action. But I don't always do like deep dives, especially when we talk about the science of how things work, and especially with nutrition. I know that is your wheelhouse. So I'm excited to bring an expert like you to the show here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So I know that anybody that develops into that leadership status as a health influencer, there's a story behind that. So why don't we start with how you kind of fell in love to that deep dive behind how the body works and the science between like how nutrition impacts our health. So let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. So I was interested in this going back to my teenage years, where I saw my mom go through her own health journey. She was in pain every night from fibromyalgia. Often I didn't sleep because of how much pain she was in. And I saw her go through her journey with experimenting with macrobiotic diets, yoga, tai chi, herbalism, all kinds of things. I don't know what the magic ingredient was, but eventually she, got to a pain-free point where that was no longer an issue for her. And it gave me the impression that nutrition and lifestyle can have a very profound effect on your health. Then it took me going through my own personal journey to really own that. And because I was so interested as a teenager, I experimented a lot. And I experimented with the zone diet, which is sort of like a not extreme, but moderately low carb, moderately high protein diet. I then became a vegan, and veganism didn't work out the way that I thought it would. I went vegan because I wanted to save the planet from environmental destruction. I wanted to save the animals from inhumane conditions, and I wanted to save myself from my risk of osteoporosis and heart disease and cancer. What happened is my health basically fell apart. So I had anxiety problems, digestive problems, and tooth decay problems since I was a kid, but they were always moderate. They got 10x worse on my vegan diet.
Wow.
I went to the dentist, found out I needed I needed 2 root canals and had over a dozen cavities in one sitting. My anxiety problems got to the point where I was afraid to eat anything in my house. And my digestive problems got so bad that I was often like writhing on the floor in pain. And I was, borderline dysfunctional at this point. And I discovered the work of Weston Price, who was a pioneer in nutritional anthropology writing around the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And he documented the nutritional transition from the traditional diets of everyone across the globe, which were very different depending on where he was investigating, to what he called the displacing foods of modern commerce, which are basically the same everywhere. They were the imported white flour, white sugar, white rice, canned goods, and syrups that displaced these diets. And he was mostly interested in tooth decay, and that's why I was interested in his work, because my teeth were decaying. But what he found was that nutritional transition was associated with physical degeneration of all types. So not just degeneration of the teeth, but risk of cancer, heart disease, gallbladder disease, just the whole list of modern complaints that we would have. And, I think today for health conscious people, it's not like super stunning to hear that white flour and white sugar were associated with health problems. It's sort of like, duh, right?
Yeah.
But what was really counterintuitive to me at that time and really influential was I was as a recent vegan, and I'm reading his analysis of why they were so healthy before those foods came in, and how they went out of their way to procure nutrient-dense animal foods like organ meats, liver and other organ meats, shellfish, and all animal life of the sea, but especially shellfish, egg yolks, insects. All these foods were like, even when I was an omnivore, I wasn't really eating that many of these foods. And I wasn't eating that much shellfish, hardly ever, and I was not eating any organ meats at all. And so I started implementing what I learned from this, and my health completely revolutionizes. The moment that I realized everything changed for my mental health was when I was working in the dining hall, and it was a few months after the fact. I see this guy pick up a stack of plates and take the one from the middle, and in my head, I judged that guy. I'm like, why did that guy not just take the one on top? And this is not a, this is like sort of like, maybe like borderline neurotic. Like, it's not that neurotic.
Right.
A lot of people do this actually. But what was crazy was a few seconds later, after I judged him in my head and said, what the hell is that guy doing? I remembered that 3 months ago, not only did I do that every time I ate, but I would take 20 minutes to pick out a glass that was clean enough to drink out of from all the clean glasses. And these were the least neurotic out of all of the things I did around eating. Like, in the worst case scenario, I was afraid to eat any of the food in my house because I thought it was drugged or poisoned. And I would extreme case I remember is I was inspecting the seal on a veggie burger, looking for evidence of tampering.
Oh my gosh.
And then I wouldn't find it. So I'd keep inspecting it for 20 minutes. And then like minute 24, I accidentally rip it open. And then I worry that it was there to begin with. And then I'm not sure if it was me or if it was there to begin with. And so I throw the veggie burger at the wall across the room. I'm angry at the veggie burger for not being edible, and I'm angry at me for not being able to eat anything. I wound up in the emergency room 6 or 7 times at the height of a panic attack. I don't remember that much from that period. Everything's kind of foggy. So like I had some pretty bad neurological problems when I was vegan. And so anyway, fast forward to this turning point, right? here I am judging this guy for picking up the stack of plates and taking the one from the middle because it was cleaner. And then I suddenly remember that 3 months ago, that was like the absolute least crazy thing that I did, and I did it every time I ate. Something happened in that transition, and I don't remember transitioning, right? So I don't know if I was I ate one bite of liver, I was instantaneously, my mind was healed, and I instantaneously forgot what it was like to be crazy, or if it was like gradually over 3 months, I was gradually healed and I gradually forgot what it was like to be crazy. All I know is that 3 months later, it had become so foreign to me to have the smallest anxiety around what I was eating. And so recently, I had so much borderline psychosis around what I was eating. So it was that right there that really drove me down the path to feeling like I had discovered big things and I had really owned this appreciation that nutrition is so powerful. That made me want to pay it forward. I wanted to go to medical school, but as I was completing a history degree, so I have to do all these science classes. And as I'm doing the science classes, I just fell in love with the molecular side of things, the invisible things behind the curtain that we can't really see. And many things just conspired me to push me in the direction of research rather than medicine. And then I went down the academic route. I got a PhD. I was assistant professor of health and nutrition sciences at a university at one point, and now I'm doing my own thing, running my own business, immersing myself in complex science, dived deep into it until I emerged to the surface to come up with some new ideas for practical things people can do to improve their health.
Yeah, and you're somebody that deep dives. Like we throw that term around a lot in podcasting. Let's do a deep dive on nutrition. You, like, some of your podcasts are 3-hour deep dives on a nutrient. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. So you boys be deep diving in the shallow end.
Yes, yeah. So once you kind of made this shift and you started really getting into this new phase of nutrition, what were some of the first things that you just went after and you went deep on?
What the hell happened to me? Yeah, I mean, I think that trying to explain what happened to me has always been a very much a guiding force in what I've done. Originally my deep dives were pretty casual, and I started making a living from writing about nutrition when I got into so much of my early career. I was writing for the Weston A. Price Foundation, which is named after Weston Price, whose work was so profoundly influential to me. So at the time, I was really just trying to get in touch with other people who were interested in Weston Price's work and kind of spread that influence on me. And I wound up kind of getting recruited by the head of the organization to write for their journal. And she would just kind of put me on research projects, like, figure this thing out for us. And it was all stuff that was very aligned with what I was doing. Like, Price put a lot of emphasis on the importance of fat-soluble vitamins. I got a lot better when I was eating a lot of liver, which has a lot of fat-soluble vitamins. And so I want to know everything about fat-soluble vitamins. So one of the early things was people were saying vitamin A causes osteoporosis. So I started looking into this question. And that's what really led me down into seeing that vitamin A is not really something you want to think about in isolation. It's really something you want to think about getting balance with other fat-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin D. And then that led me down to looking into vitamin K, and that's where I realized the importance of vitamin K2, which is important to protecting against osteoporosis and kidney stones. It's important to protecting against cardiovascular disease. It's even important to getting enough energy when you exercise, balancing your hormones, all kinds of things like that. And that is, something that's found in egg yolks and cheese and fermented foods that I started eating when I got into Weston Price's work. So those were some of the earlier things. But I mean, by now, this is in like 2004 when I started writing about nutrition. So 15 years later, I've taken a lot of deep dives.
Yeah. And so, we have vitamin A, vitamin K2, the organ meats. Do you feel like there are any other major holes in our nutritional game as a society that nobody's really paying enough attention to that you want to kind of bring to light?
Oh, I think there's lots of holes. So, I think one of the things that was biggest for me when I was a vegan in my experience is that I think I have an impairment in cholesterol synthesis, and I'm more dependent on dietary cholesterol to be healthy, especially for my nervous system. And I don't have all the evidence in place, but my cholesterol levels were really low when I was a vegan. 106 was my total cholesterol. And I think everyone's so focused on the fact that the vast majority of people need to worry about their cholesterol going too high. And those of us who need to worry about our cholesterol going too low are kind of forgotten.
Right.
So that's one thing. But all the nutrients, there's people that are running low in them, and especially because as people get more health conscious, they start cutting out a lot of the foods that are fortified. So it's like, say whatever bad things you want to say about white flour, and there's a lot of bad things to say about white flour. It has been the vehicle of transmission of public health campaigns for a very long time because 60% of the average person's diet is white flour. So they just look at white flour as this vehicle for how do we prevent neural tube defects, which are a particularly devastating type of birth defect. Oh, just put folic acid in the white flour. How do we prevent pellagra, which is a niacin deficiency that can make you go crazy and give you lots of skin problems? Just put niacin in the white flour, right? And so as you get health conscious, you remove this food that is, largely a bad thing, but has kind of made you like the ward of the nutritional establishment as they've implemented all their public health campaigns to save you from severe nutritional deficiencies by playing with your white flour, and you give that up. And now all of a sudden it's important how you put your diet together. And some people go vegan, some people go keto, some people are into losing weight. All these different things can impact your nutritional requirements in different ways. And so it really is highly individual what nutrients someone needs to worry about and where those gaps are.
So to me, it seems like this is an issue that people that are, like you said, eliminating certain things that we've relied on for some of those base nutrients just because of we're going keto, like you said, or something like that, we get rid of the flour. This seems like an issue of, okay, we need to be able to test to see where we are deficient, and then we need to be able to supplement and fill in the gaps. So let's talk about those two sides of the equation with just like, it feels like there's a lot of momentum behind different types of tests to the point now people are getting confused and like, okay, do I need this regimen or that regimen? My doctor told me this, my chiropractor told me that. So what are some good home base principles that you look for in general health testing, and where do we go for those?
Yeah. So, there's kind of two sides to this coin. So one is like the conventional doctor doesn't have that much knowledge about nutrition from medical school, doesn't have time to do research into what are the best tests for nutritional status, kind of winds up getting tests that are, they're conventional, but they don't always tell you what you need to know. And so you're kind of short on answers. Then on the other side of the coin, there's people that are frustrated with that, and they go to functional medicine practitioners who want to order a lot of expensive tests. But, maybe some of these tests are super expensive and some of them are moderately expensive. So people want to save money and they want to get this $390 panel because it tells them about all their nutrients, whereas the $630 panel might tell them almost as much stuff or more stuff, but it's more expensive. So they want to save $200. What they didn't realize is that this $390 panel doesn't have any evidence behind the accuracy of what it's measuring. And so you're trying to save a few $100s and you're just throwing $390 in the trash, and your insurance isn't going to cover any of it. And so you're kind of in this like cesspool of not being able to wade through the information to like cost effectively get high quality information. And so, one of the things that I do in my deep dives is, you were talking about, I do these 2 or 3 hour podcasts on a nutrient. Well, one of the reasons that I do that is I wind up diving so deep into this that I analyze all the literature that, no practitioner, had I gone to medical school and become a doctor, I wouldn't have time to do this. But I've sort of made my life's work about analyzing all the literature on these nutrients to understand what is the science behind one or another thing being a good test, and then, what are the ideal ranges of it, and how cost effective is it to get that. And what originally I was just doing this in the context of these 3-hour podcasts, and I had a lot of people coming to me and saying, can you make this simpler for us? Like, we just need like a cheat sheet where we can look at a 1-page PDF and know what to test and like how to interpret it.
Right.
So I tried to make this 1-page PDF, and I wound up making a 78-page cheat sheet.
Hey, this is just a really quick break in the action to remind you that I've got 2 live Million Pound Mission workshops coming up. I'm going to be doing a half-day workshop in Huntington Beach, California on September the 21st, and I'm putting on a full-day workshop at my fitness studio, the world headquarters in lovely Bloomington, Indiana on October 19th. You can head on over to millionpoundmission.com to get all the details. You can see our amazing speaker lineup for both events, and you can grab that ticket before we get sold out. Now, back to the episode.
It came down to this. I can look at all the science about what is the right test, what's the cost-effective thing, what's the right range, but none of that alleviates the need to look at the diet and what are you eating. None of it alleviates the need to look at the lifestyle, to look at things like simple tests like your blood pressure and what are your signs and symptoms. Because the reality is, I can say that serum copper is the best test and that the best range is to be between, X and Y on that metric. But the reality is, maybe your copper is on the low side of where I say is good, but your white blood cells are running low. You have some signs that your mood is sinking, and that corresponds to a time where you stopped eating chocolate, which happened to be your best source of copper because you weren't eating mushrooms, liver, or oysters. Then you're probably copper deficient, right? And so you can't just have a 1-page thing that says like blood levels need to be here and here. And so I realized what I really needed to produce was a system, a kind of algorithm of going through those things and make it as simple as possible. So I wound up producing what I consider a system of managing nutritional status to hold people's hands through this process. It's called Testing Nutritional Status, the Ultimate Cheat Sheet. And it basically holds your hand and walks you through the process of, number one, judge what you have for finances. Are finances limiting or not? And if so, how limiting? Number two, what do you have for time? Is time limiting or not? If so, how limiting? And then it walks you through the right process of collecting data, whether you should focus on saving money, whether you should focus on saving time, and then collect all the best data that you can, including collating about 180 signs and symptoms to go through the checklist, see what you have, see where that leads you, get the right blood tests, the right urine tests based on the resources you have available, put that into the information, and the right way to do a dietary analysis to see where your diet lines up in terms of what's most, what nutrients do you appear to be running short on, and then how to synthesize those things to come to a conclusion about what nutrients might be most missing, what nutrients might be present in toxic amounts or in imbalanced amounts, and then directs you to the right action plan for you and a way to make sure that action plan is effective. And so that I've sort of bundled into Testing Nutritional Status, the Ultimate Cheat Sheet. We can and that I sell it for $30. I'll give your audience a 20% discount on that. We can put that link in the show notes.
Yeah, awesome.
But that's the general approach is you need to even without the system, like if you're trying to reconstruct this on your own, you need to have those 3 legs of information: the signs and symptoms, the dietary analysis, and the lab work, because the signs and symptoms tells you on an experiential level what is happening in your body as a result. the lab work tells you on an objective, quantifiable level what is happening on your body behind the scenes as a cause of those things. And the dietary analysis tells you what is the probability that you would have too much or too little of something. And if you have evidence that you have too much or too little of something when your dietary analysis doesn't suggest it, then that is a really important clue pointing you in the direction that you might have some other underlying problem, right? Like maybe you have a digestive problem that's causing you to not absorb your nutrients. If you're clearly deficient in vitamin A and yet your vitamin A is so plentiful in your diet, then you might not be absorbing it. And so you need to look into reasons for that. So those three legs of information are what you want to consider.
So as you've put people through this regimen, has anything stood out or any trends that have popped up that surprised you a little bit as people fill out this data?
I don't know. Surprised me, but I think, I guess, yeah. Okay. So I guess, what surprises me is sometimes if I look at my clients who come to me, in that population, sometimes there's just really hard to explain needs for high levels of nutrients that can't always easily be explained. So one thing that I guess was, I don't know, now it doesn't surprise me when I see this, but when I first saw it, it surprised me. Women who have high estrogen levels often need very high amounts of vitamin B6. What you might get from food is maybe like 5 milligrams of vitamin B6 if you have a really good diet. But there's women with high estrogen often need 100 milligrams of vitamin B6. And then there's other people who the signs and symptoms and sometimes the lab work all point to B6 deficiency, and yet they're taking 50 milligrams of B6 and they still need 75 or 100. So these types of things are surprising. And it's, that's an example where, like, if you were just looking at, actually, this is a really good example. So if you are taking 20, even 25 milligrams of vitamin B6, your vitamin B6 levels on your lab work are going to be flagged as high. And from a dietary perspective, it's not going to make any sense that you need more vitamin B6. And from a conventional lab work perspective, it's not going to, your doctor is going to tell you to stop taking the supplement. They're going to say your levels are high, so you got to stop taking the supplement. And there's really, like, the best markers of vitamin B6 deficiency are actually things that you would measure in the urine that are not vitamin B6 themselves. It's products of metabolism that wind up spilling into your urine when you don't have enough vitamin B6. And so what happens is, like, there's things going on inside the cell where the cell just needs more vitamin B6. Don't know what it is, but you can see it if you do the right lab work. Like if you're looking at the things that spill out into the urine, and you can see it if you collect the signs and symptoms in the correct way to recognize the pattern. But you don't see it if you're just running routine lab work, and you don't see it if you just look at diet and supplements.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And on the point of diet and supplements, because I know a lot of people are thinking, like, I don't know if I have time to do this big survey and all this stuff, and they want it like a quick fix, which I don't always recommend, but I know that people will go there. Do you have any recommendations as like a home-based supplement regimen that most people need to look at, whether it's, omega-3s or any base recommendations that you feel like, all right, these 2 or 3 things are needed by most of the population of people that end up going through all the testing that you recommend?
So, I mean, I would prefer to start from a place of making some simple dietary rules for people to follow, and then to judge the probability of running low in certain nutrients if they deviate from those rules. But from a supplement, I mean, do you want to talk about that, or would you rather talk about supplements first?
Well, let's angle it from the way you prefer. So let's talk nutritional changes first, and then supplements from there.
Yeah, okay. So ground zero is you need to eat a nutrient adequate diet. And I think I got like 5 simple rules for this. So rule number 1 is diversify your protein among meat, fish, shellfish, and other invertebrates if you eat them. Like maybe you eat crickets. It's not that common, but people do it. It's a trend now.
Right.
Eggs and dairy products. And the reason is and in doing so, try to get a half a gram to a gram of protein per pound of body weight. If you're overweight, you can think of target body weight. So if you need to lose 100 pounds, think of your body weight after you've lost 100 pounds. And a half a gram to a gram of protein per pound of target body weight, and diversify it across those different proteins, because the vitamins and minerals in those different protein foods are different. And so by diversifying, you help make sure that you're getting them all without needing to think too much about it. Rule number 2 is to make an effort to eat nose to tail by utilizing parts of animals we've been neglecting, especially organ meats and bones and skin. Easiest ways to work those into your diet would be eating liver once a week, using bones to make broth, gravies, sauces, and eating the edible bones found in canned fish if you eat canned fish. So rule number 1 was to diversify across animals. Rule number 2 is to diversify within the animal to eat all the parts. Rule number 3 is to diversify your carbohydrates among legumes, whole grains, starchy tubers, and fruits. Now, you may not be able to eat some of these foods. For example, if you're on paleo, you can't eat whole grains. If you're on autoimmune, arguably you can't eat legumes either on paleo. Some people deviate from that. If you're on an autoimmune protocol, you're not eating the legumes. Some people are going to stay away from fruits, etc. But to the extent you eat carbohydrates and include them in your diet, and to the extent you tolerate those foods, you want to diversify across those food groups. For the same reason, diversifying in the first 2 rules, diversifying puts you into a place where you're reaping the different benefits of the different foods nutritionally. Rule number 4 would be eat a large volume, meaning several cups a day, of vegetables, diversifying them across colors with an emphasis on red, orange, yellow, and green colors, and always making special emphasis on getting dark greens. And then rule number 5 would be, I put these rules together because I think if you follow those rules, you're probably going to hit all your targets for vitamins and minerals with very few exceptions without having to micromanage any of them. But the one that really stands out as difficult to get is calcium. So rule number 5 is to get about 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day, which is easiest to get from 2 or 3 servings of dairy or edible bones, plus the background of the good diet that we were just talking about. And if you don't get those, there are some plant foods that are rich in calcium, but the absorption from a lot of them is not that good. And I'll just give you an example of what we're looking at for getting calcium from plant foods. So if you take into account the bioavailability, the plant foods that really stand out as practical for not filling you up on calories is basically 3 plant foods. So hold on one second. Let me pull up my list because I got the numbers here. So Chinese mustard greens is at the top, and it would to hit the calcium requirement, getting the equivalent of like 3 servings of dairy a day would be 2 cups of Chinese mustard greens, or you could do that in 2.3 cups of Napa cabbage, or you could do it in 3.4 cups of bok choy. And of course, you can mix and match these, but even the commonly consumed dark green vegetables like kale and broccoli, you need over 6 cups of those to meet the equivalent of 3 servings of dairy a day. And so I think that's the point where you need to be really mindful of those things, and that might be one of the factors where if you're health conscious and you have dietary restrictions, you're probably not hitting your calcium requirement. Now, granted, a lot of people are going to push back and tell me, but so many people are taking calcium supplements, and that's true. If you're following conventional health advice, then you might be supplementing with too much calcium because you're worried about if you're already eating 3 servings of dairy and you're taking 1,200 milligrams of calcium because you're a 55-year-old woman and everyone's telling you need to take calcium, yeah, you might be taking too much. But in the health conscious sphere, there's often the opposite problem because people hear that argument and so they say, oh, I don't need as much calcium as everyone's telling me.
Right.
And then they go on a restrictive diet and they are not getting enough. Like, that's very common. Now, when you start restricting things on here, you start like there's a special diet that restricts everything on the list they gave you, right?
Right.
So vegan includes everything on rule 1. Carnivore excludes everything in the rules 3 and 4, and probably excludes rule 5. Like, you're probably not getting enough calcium on carnivore, although you could if you ate canned fish with edible bones, or you found some other way to work. Bones are carnivore food for sure. So, but rules 3 and 4, right, are ditched on carnivore. And then paleo, autoimmune diets are restricting legumes, are restricting grains, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think, depending on what you're restricting, you need to start thinking about certain nutrients. So for example, on carnivore, you need to think a lot about vitamin C and manganese. You need to think about, if you design it very well, those are mainly your big ones. If you design it poorly, then you need to think about potassium, magnesium, and many other things if it's poorly designed. On a vegan diet, you need to think a lot about zinc and iron. You need to think a lot about calcium. And even on a very well-planned vegan diet, you still need to think hardcore about those nutrients, because everything in a vegan diet inhibits the absorption of zinc and iron, and everything in a carnivore diet enhances the absorption of zinc and iron. So if I was iron deficiency anemia, I'd eat a carnivore diet based on red meat, shellfish, and organ meats. And I wouldn't eat a vegan diet. But if I was a vegan diet with iron deficiency anemia, that's a place where I'd start doing blood testing. I'd start thinking about supplements. I'd start micromanaging my iron status, because and for me, that's not going to happen on a vegan diet, because I'm a man, number one, and men have lower iron requirements than women. But number two, I have the genetics for accumulating too much iron, so I have the opposite problem. But hey, if I was a woman in the 95th percentile of menstrual flow, which is which is a cause of blood loss, and blood loss is the key thing that increases your needs for iron, then on a vegan diet and I have iron deficiency anemia, I think you're pretty screwed if you're not managing that with supplements and blood tests and managing it super carefully. So yeah, it's all like, I think the supplements are really like, so people ask me, like, can't I just take a multivitamin? Sure. Right. The best multivitamin is 2 servings of liver a week and 1 oyster and 1 clam every day, and a couple tablespoons of nutritional yeast if you wanted to do it from food. The best things, if you wanted to be supernatural about it, the best things to do would be to take like 6 to 9 capsules of liver extract and 8 capsules on a full stomach spread across your meals, 8 capsules a day of oyster extract on an empty stomach, and like a tablespoon of unfortified nutritional yeast with each meal are like the best nutritional supplements from very natural whole foods you could do. And then, if you don't want to do that and you want to pick a multivitamin, like, I'm not really happy with any multivitamins on the market. There are some brands that I like better than others. Seeking Health does a good job. Thorne does a good job. There's a few others. I'll probably make my own series of multivitamins at one point, just because I don't like the ones that are out there. But I've yet to do that. But then it's highly individualized. That's where it comes back to something like the system and the cheat sheet. It's like you do everything right. And then so basically there's 2 possibilities. You try to eat well and you try to use some judicious supplements or a multivitamin, and either you feel great and you don't really care about optimizing further, then just, go play golf the rest of your life. You're done. Or there's 2 other possibilities. One is you feel great, but you're obsessed with this and you really want to micromanage everything because you feel great now, but you want to make sure you feel great in 30 years. Then that's where you get into comprehensive nutritional testing to optimize everything. And the second possibility is you feel you did everything right and you feel like crap, or you feel pretty good, but like you've got this skin problem, or your mood runs down, or like there's just a couple things left that you really don't know what the causes are, but it's totally plausible it might be nutrients, and that's where you want to get into tracking and testing and stuff too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just kind of going with those different levels, because I run into a lot of people that I coach that are like, you know what, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now. Do I have to keep pushing the threshold? I'm like, no, let's kind of sit in the moment. Eventually, you'll set some new goal that'll get you outside of your comfort zone. But it's okay to be happy and just kind of sit where we're at for a while and enjoy that.
Yeah.
So now I love to ask people like you where you like to get your meat and your shellfish. Like what sources are you on? Local farmers market? Are you ordering from one of the online brands? Where do you go for your products?
Yeah, so for supplements, I am currently using Ancestral brand liver capsules and Oyster Max oyster extract. For fresh meats, it depends how much time I have. So some of my favorite places are North Star Bison to get bison. I do like Butcher Box. I think their grass-fed beef tastes really good.
Yeah, I agree.
And I like White Oak Farms for some things. So White Oak Farms is the one farm that has their slaughterhouse on site, and so they're particularly for people who have like histamine intolerance, where the meats and especially organ meats need to be super, super fresh. They're a great place to go just because they have like the freshest meat that you can get. But quite often, like just out of time constraints, I get an Amazon Fresh order that has whatever organic chicken or something like, like my system right now is when I'm low on meat, I'll just have an Amazon order come in with an organic chicken, and I have someone who works for me who cooks it in an Instapot and puts it in the fridge so I can just take pieces of it out. But so it depends on like how together I have everything. But those brands that I just mentioned are my favorites.
What about the liver? What type of animal do you like to do the liver from?
I think bison liver is the best. It's sort of trial and error. So each liver has a different taste profile and a different texture profile. And I've found that the taste of beef liver is, I think, the worst in terms of being the strongest kind of odor that people don't like. And the taste of bison and lamb are milder, but lamb the texture just doesn't have much integrity in my experience, and so it gets kind of mushy and just really gross. Whereas bison liver has a nice balance of taste and texture. Chicken liver, I think too, is milder. I just like the texture of bison, just has more integrity for me. But I think it's such an individual thing. Like people ask me about the nutritional profiles, and it's like, look, the liver you eat is the liver that is good for you. Like, there are some differences in nutritional profiles, but at the end of the day, like some people just will eat chicken liver and they will not eat bison liver. Some people will eat bison liver and they will not eat beef liver. And so you just got to experiment with trial and error and see what you like and what's a sustainable habit for you.
Have you ever tried venison liver before?
I can't remember.
So if I have a good hunting season this year, because we're in the Midwestern Indiana, so we deer hunt. If I get a good hunting season, I'll freeze one and send it out to you so you can try it.
Cool.
I love it, man. They're good sized, and that's about as grass fed as you get.
Awesome.
So now with the liver specifically, I tend to freak out. Like that's why I like the venison liver, because I see the animal, I hunt it, I harvest it myself. But how concerned are you with like non-organic? Is that, if they're running, if you get a beef liver and it's got, hormones running through it and things like that, does that freak you out as much as it does me?
It doesn't freak me out, but I don't know if I've ever eaten a non-organic liver.
Okay. Yeah. So, that's something that
I'm the kind of person that I can afford organic liver now, and when I couldn't, I bought it anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah. Because you have all that knowledge, and like I do that too. If I learn something, I'm like, okay, that's poisonous. I'm totally freaked out about that. I've got children, and so It's like if my wife tries to feed my kids a non-organic strawberry, I will like dive and throw my body between the strawberry and them. So yeah,
There is a misconception that I think we should correct, which is that there's a lot of people who think that the liver holds on to toxins and therefore liver is likely to have a lot of toxins. That's not true. The liver doesn't hold on to toxins. It gets rid of toxins. However, if you have any, it does accumulate metals, both nutritional and toxic. And so, liver is very high in copper. But like if the cow is next to some plant that's giving off tungsten or barium or something like that, it's going to be high in those metals too. So I do think that you want the highest quality you can get. Probably the main danger is some of the metals that can accumulate. Generally, I'm not too freaked out about it because the nutritional metals that accumulate in liver are very protective against the toxic metals that can accumulate in liver. But you don't want to eat toxic metals if you don't have to. So right. There's reasons to get organic, and preferably you go more than that. You go pastured from a good and clean environment. But I do want to dispel the myth that if it's not organic, it's going to be full of all kinds of toxins because the liver filters toxins and holds on to them. It doesn't. So I do want to say that.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Now, I want to make sure that people can get connected to you, Chris, because obviously we've just hit the very edge of your knowledge base here with this, last 45 minutes. And I really want to encourage people to do that test, to go through that entire process and get some analysis done so you can take some next steps that really make sense. So where do they go to dive into your universe?
Yeah, so the two introductory ways of getting in touch with me would be to join my free Vitamins and Minerals 101 class, and we can put the link to that in the show notes. And certainly, if you want to manage your nutritional status along the lines we were talking about, my Testing Nutritional Status, the Ultimate Cheat Sheet, is a great introductory thing to get, and that costs $30, but we'll give your audience a 20% discount. We put that link in the show notes too. And then if you want to dive further into all my other stuff, chrismasterjohnphd.com. Googling Masterjohn and whatever you want to know is another way to find my stuff. And then I'm at Chris Masterjohn on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and every so often on Snapchat.
Nice. Snapchat shout out. All right. So now for those of you that are listening in, here's how I'm going to explain if you will love Chris's website. I think it's a great resource, but some of you will really, really love it. So if you're the type of person, when you when you flip on a light switch, and if you wonder, how does that work? How does that electricity work? With me, I turn on the light switch because I want to see some light, and I'm like, I'm good. So, but if you're like, I wonder how that all connects and works, you will love Chris's website. It is a resource of deluxe proportions. So, if you like deep diving on stuff, go at it. You'll come up for air in about a week, and you'll be about 10% through all the stuff. So, it's an amazing resource. So, thanks for that, Chris. Now, I like to give our audience a little bit of inspiration and some implementation opportunity as we exit an interview. So let's say that we've got somebody fired up, but they're just totally confused about what nutrition they should be implementing and all, supplements. They're just really feeling confused about where to start, kind of that initial domino to flip over to start a chain reaction of some positive momentum. So if you could sit down and look that person in the eye, what's an initial step that they could take in the next 24 hours just to get a little bit of momentum going?
They could download the Chronometer app and track their food for a few days to collect a representative sample of what they're eating and look at their micronutrients and see where they measure up.
Nice. We've never had that tip given out before, and that is an excellent one, and you can start that analysis. So, Chris, man, I know you're super busy. You got a lot of things going on, and you really, I know you spend a lot of time focusing on delivering for your audience. And as a podcast listener, I really appreciate that, man. So I appreciate your time here, invested in the Million Pound Mission today.
Thanks, Adam. It was great to be here.
All right, everybody, you have your implementation steps. You've been inspired. Now it's time to set that implementation alarm in the next 24 hours. What are you going to do? How are you going to take action so that you can get out there and own it every meal, every workout, every day? I will see you on the next episode. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out after the episode. What a great job by Chris Masterjohn. I love diving deep on nutrition. You can connect with Chris through all the links in the show notes and the blog at millionpoundmission.com. Now, before the episode, I mentioned special speaker announcement for October Million Pound Mission live workshop here at the home base, the world headquarters in Bloomington, Indiana. Alexa Schirm, one of our most popular podcast guests. She was on episode number 191, still one of the top most downloaded episodes I've got. I know you guys love Alexa. She is amazing. She's dynamic. She's so well-versed in how the body works, hormones, sleep, nutrition. You guys are going to love being connected to her. And don't forget, if you get a platinum ticket, you get special VIP access to all the speakers. You're going to do a special small group mastermind the night before the event with the speakers. You're going to have a special fitness workshop with the speakers the morning before the event. Just imagine working out with Danny Vega and Robert Sykes and Alexa Schirm and all these awesome speakers. Then the day of the event, you get to have lunch with the speakers in a small group, and we're going out for dinner afterwards for a little after party and full access to the speakers. You can sit and just break bread with them, although we'll probably keep it low carb. You know how I roll. But we'll break some steak together and just have a good time. And I really enjoy putting you in front of those types of people. So get all the information on the different ticket levels. We only have a few platinum level tickets left. So if you want to get connected at that level, check it out. millionpoundmission.com. That's the place to be. So if you guys have any questions about the event, hit us up at on Instagram or on the website at millionpoundmission.com, and we will see you on the next episode.